Hi everyone, I hope you had a great weekend. I want to start to check the day 8 lecture, Crime and Criminal Justice System. So, why crime matters? Well, it surely matters because it's kind of behavior that is prohibited because the criminals are banned by the law or because of its harmful offensive output. So, the violences conducted by the crime are not very good for the public. So, it's like a legitimate to ban the crimes by the law. However, who decides what's harmful or offensive? Or maybe smoking around the people who are the smokers can be very harmful and very offensive sometimes, but it is not designed or classified as the crime by the law. But some harmful behaviors is not crime, but some not harmful behaviors can be a crime. So using the illegal drugs, for example, so if the guy doesn't sell or other manufacture the drug, but just use the drug for his own pleasure. It may be very harmful for his health, but it may not be very harmful to other people's health or other things. So if he doesn't attack other people or something. So there are some like controversials about the defining the crime in the society. But anyway. So there are some like vulnerabilities of being considered as the crimes. So it is noted that the like males and racial minorities and lower classes and some special religion people are considered as a crime higher than the whites or other races. So there are some non-equal or non-fair conceptions or perceptions about the crime. So there are many controversies about the crime, but I will focus on the theories of the crime, especially in the sociology, and I want to see a current state of the crime to see what are the criminal justice systems and what are some policies to reduce the crime. So public concern are arising to the crime. So surely public is clearly concerned about the crime because the media covers about the crime and we individuals worry about the crime. So it's very clear that it's very dangerous, or if we feel it's very not safe to walk around outside the street if it is dark or if it is very isolated and if it is not well protected area. So we have some like increased frustrations in our life walking out or entering engaging with the strangers, but our level of concern is not real. So for example, our level of concern is like that 20% of the public worried about the criminals or worried about especially about being a victim of the homicide. However, only 0.1%, so 0.1% of all violent and property crime are homicide deaths. So 20% versus 0.1% is like a very huge difference. So we have like a higher concern than the facts about the crime, but it's not like a fake worry because the deaths in the related to homicide is very dangerous and too critical to ignore. So it's very hard to say that our concern is too high. It is fakely, but it's true that we have higher concern level than the reality of the risk of the homicide or other crimes. So media myths are reading so many fake myths. So media takes some role about the myths that there is very high risk of the homicide and there's like a high concerns in the about the crimes. So the media covers very several stories about a few sensational crimes. Surely they cannot cover every crime, so they should pick up the crimes, but they just use very dramatic and very dynamic crimes. So they have like a 25% of the media coverage about the violent crime, about the homicide. But as we saw before, only 0.1% of the all violences, crimes, behaviors are related with the homicide. So it's very hard to say that they are representing the fairly about the criminal justice or the crimes. So because they are overestimating the volume of the crimes. But there are some also those tendency of the highlight crimes committed by the minority members, especially by the African Americans or other racial minorities. So, for example, if the white is murdered by the African American, it can be covered very dynamically by the media. But if the African American is died by the white Americans, so it's rarely covered compared with the other case. So measurement of the crimes. So there are many statistics about crime, but Uniform Crime Reports is the one of the primary source of the crime used by the government. So this is the crime data produced by the police. So police report generated to the FBI, and they generate the statistics. So there were about 10.3 million crimes counted, but there are some underreported crimes such as the hidden crimes. So it has some like concerns about the validity of the quality of the data, because a National Crime Victimization Survey says that the higher rate of the crime, because the former crime rate, I mean the UCR, does not include the white collar crimes, which is like a bigger part of the crime for the white criminals. So National Crime Victimization Survey is also like a randomized survey, anonymous. So it's doing better record about the victimization, but still it also has some limitation that it excludes the commercial crimes. So the third part of the measurement of the crimes is the self-referral survey. So this is occasional self-referral survey. It is anonymous, so it's easy to fill, but it has like a limitation of the content. So all three measurement of the crimes has own positive aspects, but also limitations with the regard of the quality of the measurements. So let's see the major types of crimes. So if you hear about the major types of crimes, you may imagine some types of the media, such as the movies, the criminal movies. So violent crime is one type of very common crime. So it's homicides, like assault, rape, or sexual assault or robbery. So these are the criminal behaviors related with the violence or damages to the personals. So real threat to the many people. So we worry about the homicides or other assaults or other criminal behavior like a street robbery. So when we receive some school alerts, so when we receive the email from the police department that there are some like a robbery within the campus, especially in the sociology building. So in that point, yeah, for us, we should worry about the area, and we need to keep our safety by getting out of the space or just staying at home like that. So this is kind of very real threats as we live in this area or in this country, but in terms of reality, so even though the crime rates are high in some places, so maybe it's not real in our place as well. So there are some myths about the violent crime, but the myths cannot excuse our concern level about the crimes. So first type of the violent crime is the homicide, which causes some deaths. So most cases call attention, even though it just takes a very small proportion of the all crimes, about 25% of the media coverage is about the homicide. So 25 through 50% of the homicides are victim precipitated. So the victim initiated the cause of the death. It's not, yeah, I'm not, it's very weird to say in that way, but anyway, in that case, victims started some argument, and then the dependent made some argument and then escalated some emotions and then resulted in some homicide. It's very sad to say, but yeah, there are so many related issues, such as 75% of all homicides involve non-strangers as well. So we have some high concern that somebody will kill me if I just walk around the street and if I encounter the robbery. But about most of the cases, the homicide involved with the people we know. So this is a kind of myth, but it does not be the excuse of our concern level. So homicide is related with the firearms, like 66% as the firearms, and 50% of the firearms are the handgun, especially. So most typical incident is, so as I mentioned before, most typical incident is the homicide by the non-stranger we knew already. By the arguments, it escalates and then result in the use of deadly force like a gun. So there's one also myth that there's some minority members who will kill some other race members, but most homicides are intra-racial. I mean, within race. So the same race member kills the same race member. So it's very consistent with the previous content that they already knew each other on the incident of homicide. So there are some a higher tendency of the intra-racial homicides compared with the interracial homicides, such as the killing white by the African Americans or other races. And especially males commit 90% of homicides because of the socialization process and culture. And homicide rate is much higher in the larger cities because they live in the more populated cities, so they have some a higher population density. So we have more people around us, and then they have some a poor area. So in the urban area, especially for example around the DC, there are some a poor area with the high density and with a high poverty level, and then they have some a higher chance of the homicide. And homicide rate declined in level of after 2000, but we still have the high concerns about the being a victim of the homicide. So the property crime is the causing some damage of the property. So burglary, larceny, motor vehicle theft, and arson are robbery are some a part of the property crime. So very common type of crimes that we can encounter in our daily life. So we can say the daily life but I can say our life in here. So predicting the losses of the billions of dollars annually in the US. So it's very huge amount of money. So most property offenders are amateur offenders, but still, like a movie, there are so many professional offenders plan property crime in advance compared with the unplanned robbery by the amateur offenders. So they learn their skills from other professional thieves. So as we saw in the movies, they learn some special skills, like artistic skills from the other professional thieves, and then do the bank robbery like that. So they're easy to professional offenders, and they cause huge amount of losses compared with the amateur offenders. So white collar crime has some a public image that higher social class people who wear those very fascinating suit and wise and very tall, handsome guy make some crimes by using his knowledge of the lawyer or business like that. So crime committed by the person who has a high social class and high social quality in the course of his occupation or their occupation, and that is the white collar crime. It sounds like a smart crime at all. So in some, it's very harmful than street crime in terms of the economic roles, because usually white collar crimes are involved in a large amount of money. So white collar crime, the lawsuit and medical processes and the corporation could cause huge loss of the money and the health or even death. So fraud of physicians, attorneys, and other professionals and illegal behaviors by executives of the corporations are like a very serious crime in these days. So, for example, some corporations, they want to increase or protect their benefits and kills or damage the people. So this kind of white-collar crime. So annual deaths from the corporate violence, like violences committed by the corporations or the people of the corporations, exceed the number of the street crime from the homicide. So illness of the employees of the corporation without safe and adequate work environment. So because corporations want to save their money in the facilities, in the factories, for example, they do not invest money for their safe and clean environment for the employees. And then if the employees are sick and if they are in the dangerous situation, yeah, it's kind of preventable, but not prevented to keep the corporation's benefits or profits. So it's kind of also the white collar crime. And unsafe products cause the harmful effects to public. So if they sell some like very decent products, so it may cause some like a death or some other disease for the public. So one famous case is the Ford Pinto. So they found that the Ford, the corporation of the car manufacturer corporation, found some very serious problem in their Pinto, which is like to be released very soon. And if they want to fix the problem, they had to pay about $14 or $15 per the car. But after calculating the loads of the money, the fixing the problem was more expensive than setting the loads to the Pinto drivers. They had some problems such as in death or the burns. So it's kind of a very radical choice for the corporation if they want to keep the benefits or profits. It could be some radical decision for them because they could have more benefits compared with the fixing the problem before the release. But some users, the drivers who drive the Pinto, has some burns and even resulted in the death. So it's this kind of more hazard problem. So because of their pursuing their benefit, the individual drivers, the victims of the drivers of the Ford Pinto, resulted in the serious disease or serious damages in their skins. So this is kind of more hazard related with the white collar crime, which can result in a very huge amount of rules. So organized crime is like you have some like a public image of the gangs or mafia. So this is the organized crime. So in prohibition period, which is kind of prohibiting alcohol in the early 19th century, so they have like organized crime earned huge amount of money by selling the alcohol and selling the other illegal products related with the issue. So illegal drugs and prostitution and pornography and loan shaking and gambling are some current forms of the organized crime, but reducing the demands for the behaviors. So there are many ways to reduce the organized crime, like having some like a higher penalty or having some stronger criminal justice system can reduce the organized crime. But scholars say that reducing the demands, so for example, providing some little amount of the drugs to the addicted users to treat for the treatment, for example, that can be some kind of reducing the demands for the behaviors of the organized crime, and that will be considered as the more beneficial or more effective way compared with the increasing some method to ban or having some stronger penalties for the organized crimes. So consensual crime sounds a little bit weird because it's kind of crime resulting in no victims. So if somebody used illegal drugs, sex with prostitutions, gambling with illegal formats, or using the pornography, so these are illegal and they are violating the law. But it's kind of the activities for their own pleasure, not attacking or not damaging to others. So it can be not perfectly not victimless, but they maybe have some like a harmful effects to the society. So it's a little bit controversial, and also very not clear area, but it's also like they have some like more harms than good, so they are prohibited. But there are some issues that what degree should the government ban behaviors that people are doing because they just want to, but not accompanied with the unwilling victims. So it's very controversial. So the theories of the crime. So there are three major theories, but before that, I want to talk about the demographics of the crimes. So social background matters in sociology, especially in many social sciences. So we see differentials by the gender, age, social class, and region as the Southerners or Easterners, and race and ethnicity, and even the religion impact different level of the crime behaviors. So as I mentioned before, males are more likely to commit crime, and in terms of age, if they are like young teens and early 20s, they are more likely to commit a crime compared with the older populations. And social class, so more crimes by the lower social class members are done in common sense, but it's not clear as well. So because there are so many debates that it's a very absolute number, and then there are more absolute number of the crimes by the lower class members, and then it matters. And then in the counterpart, scholars say that minority members are more likely to be arrested if they do the same crime with the other majority races, such as whites or other races. So there are controversial result, but anyway, social class also matters. And urban residents are more likely to be the victims of the crimes. And then race and ethnicity is also controversial, as I mentioned before in the social class part. So there are many myths and prejudices about that. Minority members such as the African Americans and Latinos are more likely to commit crime. And by the police reports and the statistics, yeah, it's true that the crime rate of those races are higher than the non-Latino whites, but also there are some like issues that they are more easily be arrested, so it's controversial as well. So, and there are also like lower class members and urban residents in the urban cities. It's also problematic, but whites are more likely to commit the most white collar crimes. So most numbers of the white collar crimes are committed by the whites. So in the previous part, I mentioned that the white collar crimes are more costly compared with the street crimes in terms of the loss of the money and illness and the deaths. So it's a little bit mixed part that the number of crimes matters or the amount of the loss matters. But anyway, this is the demographics of the crimes in the current US. So the functionalism, which is the first part of the theory, explains about the crime. So there are two parts: the social disorganization theory and the enemy theory. So social disorganization theory blames about the social characteristics in the urban settings. So in the early 19th century, in the Chicago, there were some like urban settings with the high poverty level and more crimes and some like disoriented race proportion. So higher rate of the poverty was related with the population density and the dilapidation and population turnovers. So because of those characteristics, they had weakened social institutions such as family, school, and religion, lead to weak bonds and norms. So they have some like weak norms to keep the safety of the others, and they were more likely to commit the crimes. So economic theory is also very important theory. So after the Great Depression period, the poor could not achieve some the American dream. So they couldn't achieve the economic success, and they felt very frustrated because they couldn't fulfill the cultural norms and cultural goals that they could earn some enough money, or they could be rich if they work very hard. So their hope and their beliefs were broken, and then yeah, they committed some crime because they lose their hope and they lose their goals. So, but not all crimes are motivated by the economic reasons. So for example, rape is not caused by the economic motivations. So economically, yeah, committing rape or other sexual assault are not very beneficial, but they are done by their instincts or other motivations. So, but not all criminal activities are attached with the dropping out of the society. So, economic theory mentioned that they are too frustrated and they are antisocial people. But yeah, not many criminal activities are attached with the dropping out of the society. So, but also, yeah, it's very complex that frustration resulting from the poverty can produce higher level of the criminal behavior. So, economic theory is not perfect theory, but it can still explain many parts of the crimes, especially by the frustrated people by their social condition. So this is the logical dimensions of the economy. So the columns are the goal of the economic success. So in the American dream, in that period and in this period, anyways of getting some economic success and in the resulting in the economic success is the goal of the culture. And the other part is the value of working. So this is using the valid ways and law abiders or keeping the role and something. So accepting the valid working is within the place of the law. So we need to work in the range of the law. And then rejecting the valuable working is finding the unlawful ways, so illegal ways to produce the values and produce the economic success. So if we accept the goal of the economic success as being rich and then work just within the range of the law, this is kind of conformity that very good citizens in the USA. And also using the illegal ways to get the success is innovators. So it's like a positive explanation that innovators, but they are white collar criminals, using their smart brain to earn some more money. So this is innovation. Even though they deny the economic success goal, if they live in the range of the law, they are ritualism. And ritualism is kind of the people who commit more crimes that reject the economic success and they could not fulfill the economic success and then use the illegal ways to have the success. So they are more likely to do crimes. So this is the explanation of the economic theory. And differential association theory is related with the social process theory, which is the symbolic interactionism theory, which emphasizes on the interactions between and among the people or individuals. So the crime grow out the interaction with the others. So if they have more friends who are some delinquent, who do more delinquencies, they are more likely to break the law and they are more likely to commit crimes. So if they have the bad friends, the children or the child will be the bad one. So interacting with the peers and neighborhood takes a very important role in the growth of the crimes in the city. So, but also it's very limited to explain crimes usually committed by lone offenders. So if they a sex rape or something, they can be affected by the friends and they can participate their criminal activities, but this is just conducted by their own instinct or by their own motivation. So it's also limited to explain some part of the crimes. So social bonding theory is the bond that makes them matters. So if the people have some like high bonds with the society and family and the schools, they are less likely to commit crime. So they say that we should have some good relationships in the family, especially between the parents and the children. So if the parents keep their children very well in the good manner and in the good education, the children will be less likely to commit crime. But it's also limited in the crimes of like white collar crimes. They are educated very well and they may have some good bond with other social network, but they are the offenders who do well in the school and the family. So it's also limited. So labeling theory is having some like a discrimination or prejudice about the criminals who have some previous behaviors of the criminals. So labeling someone, so for example, treating some people who was in the prison about 5 years, and then if he has some limitations in the employment because of his criminal record, it's kind of labeling someone. So giving negative self-image and limit of the job opportunities of the criminal people. So it has like a very negative consequences for them because they cannot earn money and they will be very poor after imprisonment and incarceration, and they should find some other ways to earn the money, and then it could be sometimes a bit the illegal part or violating the law. So high incarceration rate of the racial minorities such as African Americans and the Latinos may result in some higher rate of the crime because of the labeling process. So it's very controversial that so like a harsher punishment such as imprisonment may control the criminals or even increase the crimes because of the labeled process. So there is a conflict theory. So there are the three major theories in the conflict theory. So group conflict theory is using the capitalism as the part of the theory. So criminal law is shaped by the majority people and to control the conflict among the various social groups. So the groups with the more power try to pass the law banning behaviors of the subordinated groups and tend to engage. So immigration law in these days or some other the rules to prevent African Americans and Latinos to enter the market would be considered as the group conflict theory. So abusing hostility toward the social groups who are very hated or who are very weak by the prejudice or discriminations will be explained by the group conflict theory. So radical theory is the highlight importance of the economic and social class. So exploitation and oppression of the poor and the working class people by the capitalist cause the crimes. So crime will be inevitable in the capitalism because the capitalism pursues the profits of the corporation and it has like a free competition to gain the benefits. But crime will be lower in the socialism or communism societies because they play more emphasis on the welfare of the one's groups, like their communities. But is it true? We don't know. Maybe we know because there are some like a low economic success in the communism societies, and they also have the very high crime in these societies, possibly. So, yeah, there is some problems in the radical theory, but this is a part of the conflict theory. So feminist theory especially explains about the victim, not victims, but the homicides or other criminals by the woman. So a woman usually try to use like a gentler, it's very weird, but softer way. So they are less likely to use the gun compared with the men. So gender role is run in the socialization and different level of bonds. So in the socialization level, the girls are less likely to be aggressive and they have better bond within the family. So that's why women are less likely to commit a crime compared with the males. So criminal justice system and the reduction of the crime. So criminal justice system has some like a very various matrices, but it also has some paradoxes. So the first primary goal is keeping the public safe by apprehending and reducing the crime, but also simultaneously the criminal justice system has some goal as protecting individual freedom from the abuse of power by the law enforcement agents such as government or the policies and other criminal court like that. So it's very ideal to keep the both of the two purposes in the democracy. But how well we can reduce the crime and respect the freedom. For example, to reduce the crime by the illegal drugs, the government need to prohibit or limit the market, but it's out of the freedom for the individuals. So it's very hard, sometimes impossible to fulfill the two goals simultaneously. And also, can we treat the people equally without the prejudice or regardless of their social class, race and ethnicity, gender, religion, and other social characteristics? It's very hard to say that we can do that. So police is the first line of the defense. So they face very high risk of their own life and hostility from the criminals. So yeah, they can be very authoritarian and like suspect they will be very suspicious. So it's very hard to see very gentle and very kind police when we encounter them in the off the road like that. So their working personality can be shaped by their high risk of their life and the hostility from the criminals. But I'm not saying that police corruption and police brutality can be excused because of condition, but it's also that we should have some respect of on their life conditions and their work conditions are endangered. So it's also very mixture of the knowledges about the parties. So some directed control are very useful to reduce the crimes, like more patrols in the some patrols of the jammed area of the crimes will reduce the crime rate very effectively, very shortly. But in the long term, the criminals will find some other places to commit the crimes, like drug sales or something. So it also has some like limitations. So criminal courts are the legal system dealing with the criminal activities. So it should have some like high trust level, but unfortunately, like a justice denial, like injustice for all, there are like many popular critics. So for example, of the celebrity or the famous sports player O.J. Simpson. So criminal defendants are usually the poor and near poor, but they have very insufficient and ineffective counsels in the process of the criminal court. So there is also the problem of the like a plea bargaining, dealing with the dependents, which have some like a reduced sentence if he or she agreed to plead guilty. But this is like a problem with the combined with the previous one that like injustice and for all, and the poor people or for dependents have like a very insufficient source about the criminal court, so they are more likely to plead guilty, even they can win if they go to trial. So this is also problematic by their class and thereby by their gender or race. So prison is also like a hot issue. So people of the color in prison is like 60% of the all federal prisoners. So 60% of the prisoners consist of the African Americans and Latinos, but they are just about 30% of the population, so 2 times higher than their actual proportion of the population in the U.S. So there are also like a better quality of the facilities of prisoners. So maybe some of you may think that they just deserve to live in that devastating condition because they are the criminals, but there are also other issues that they are easily arrested if they are the minority races, and there are like a wrong information about the imprisonment. So they could be imprisoned even though they are not related with the crime like that. So there are many issues, but anyway, they have some like a better quality of life in the prisons. So there are some, like two debates between the two perspectives that regarding the imprisonment. So we have very high imprisonment in the US, and then that will be very useful and very effective way to control the crime and keep the society very safe, because yeah, it's kind of pulling them and then removing them from the society into the prison, like an isolated place. Then it will be helpful to reduce the crime rate. And then, yeah, that can be very justifiable and reasonable, but it also has some problems that the current level of the high imprisonment do not help to reduce the crime, and at least like a very cost-efficient manner. It's very costly to keep them in the prison. And should have the crime prevention program, as the prison can be a school to be the breed more criminals. So as I mentioned in the professional robbery or professional thieves, so they can learn the useful skills such as the like robbery skills or other skills in the prison. So it's kind of a school or the master and discipline relationship in the prison. So it may not be very helpful to have like a larger density of the people in the prison, because that can be a great school to learn about the criminals or the crime strategies. And death penalty. So the US is the only Western democratic country that sentences common criminals to do death. So capital punishment does not deter homicide usually. So death penalty is racially discriminatory. So higher rate of the death penalty toward the ethnic minorities such as the African Americans, even though they have the same degree of the criminals. And there are also the possibility of the problems of the wrongful executions. So after doing the death penalty, and then after of his or death, yeah, he could be very innocent after collecting the cases. Yeah, it's problematic. And I'm not sure what you had about the in your common sense about the cost of the execution, but keeping him or her in the prison is cheaper than the cost of the execution, about 2 or 3 times. So it's even more expensive. And reducing the crimes. So we have so many strategies, but there are some strategies like a national effort to reduce the poverty, to improve the neighborhood and community condition, so that they have like a better environment to have better life quality. And changes in how Americans raise their boys, less aggressiveness and less violent ways, and expansion of the early child intervention as the treatment or prevention programs, and national effort to improve the national schools and the schoolings to have the better bonds and the better educations. And change in the criminal justice system helps reduce repeat offending and save the money. So we have some high level of the incarceration level, and they may be very useful and may not be very useful. So we may need to revise the criminal justice system and to reduce the repeated offending or repeated criminals and save the money. So as you always do, submit your quiz and daily writings on time. And yeah, I have some comments that the voice control, or I mean the quality of the sound was not good in the previous video. So I'm using the different the mic and the webcam to have the better quality of the audio. But if you have any problems or issues about the other quality issues, other things, yeah, just feel free to let me know about that. Okay, thank you and enjoy your rest of the day.